1 year ago today in Minneapolis, drivers in afternoon rush hour got the scare of a lifetime. In less than a minute, everything changed as the Interstate 35 bridge gave way, collapsing into the cold, murky waters of the Mississippi River. It was the worst bridge collapse in this country's history.
The bridge collapsed. Where at? In downtown Minneapolis. People are all over the place. What's wrecked yourself? I don't know. Please tell me. I need a location. What's wrecked yourself? What's the cross street?
Everything you've got, the whole bridge over the river fell down. There's cars all over the place.
Okay, where, sir?
I want to say 35W over the Mississippi, down by the U.
The whole bridge is in the water. I mean, it's down, and I thought, that can't be, but it was. I mean, everything was down.
You could hear sheer terror and panic. Has anything really changed since that bridge collapse? Are our bridges and highways any safer? Well, joining us now is Associate Professor of Civil Engineering at Temple University, William Miller. And it's good to have you. Thanks so much for coming in this morning.
Good morning, Gwen.
So here we are a year later, and you have to ask the question, has anything really changed?
Yes, over the last year, the level of bridge inspections and concern at the state level has certainly increased, in some states more than in other states.
Well, after the bridge collapse, there really was a nationwide effort. I mean, every state had crews out there inspecting bridges, and I think that was really a huge reality check, because then we found that the problem was much bigger than we thought, right?
Yes, and the problem is actually getting bigger day by day as bridges age. The states are doing their inspection and maintenance and repair where the funding is available to do that.
Well, I know that Congress is trying to pass another $1 billion in repair funding, but the Bush administration is threatening to veto that legislation. Why?
The congressional legislation for the House bill has just gone to Senate, and you're correct, it has the $1 billion allocation in it. At both the state and the federal level, the issue with funding infrastructure issues in general is tax revenue. Mm-hmm. So the issue of tax revenue becomes a political issue, and at both the state and the federal level you have problems state by state getting these allocations made.
We're talking about saving lives, though. I think that's probably the frustrating part when you're a voter and now it's become a political issue.
Yes.
I think a lot of times that we think that the older bridges are the problems, but when you think back to Massachusetts, the Big Dig, I mean, that was just a couple of years ago, and basically you have a woman who lost her life because 3 tons of concrete fell down right onto the car as she was riding in with her husband. So can we trust the newer bridges?
Yes, the mistakes will be made, accidents will happen. There are cases where construction is not completed exactly as designed, and this is why you need on-site engineers to handle these problems. But there are always going to be the exceptions to these cases.
Yeah. The Associated Press recently conducted a survey of 48 states, and they polled them on the bridges within those states. And take a look at what they found, because I think it's a little bit alarming. They found that 64% of the bridges that needed repairs only got basic upgrades. Now, are basic upgrades enough?
The work that's done at the state level is based on the funding that's available. So they prioritize the problems with the bridges, and they spend the money where it's most effective.
So they're skimping because they don't have the money, enough money that's allocated. Therefore, really, they're putting lives at stake, wouldn't you say?
That's the issue.
Wow. Who's to blame for how we got to this point?
Well, you and I and everybody else who drives on the interstate highways, we're responsible for the existence of the highways through our taxation and legislation at the federal and state level. So it's the taxpayer and the voter who's responsible.
Why wasn't money set aside for these repairs? When you look at all the money that we're spending on Afghanistan and Iraq, I mean, I think people say, what about in this country, the things that need to sustain us?
That's true. It just takes the political will at both the federal and state level to make these decisions and to have the funding allocated. But again, it goes back to the problem of a limited pot of money that has to be distributed on a priority basis. And in recent times, you haven't had a match between what's required to be done and what's able to be done.
Well, hopefully the lawmakers will be able to come to some kind of a solution for this, and I know that the voters are going to be watching, and we'll keep you posted, everybody. William Miller, Associate Professor of Civil Engineering at Temple University, thanks so much for being here this morning.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right, we're going to get another check of, your first check of the